So, I've been trying to think of a topic for our first video back for 2019. It's been a while.
Yes.
And I don't know, I think I want to talk about like the unspoken
Yes.
hero of everybody's yard home.
Yes. Oh,
You
yes.
know, the one that doesn't get enough credit, I guess. And I'm not talking skeletons. I want to talk to you guys about electricity, power, electricità, voltage, amps, watts, breakers. Hey y'all, it's Kellen from K&T Do Halloween. I hope everybody's having a great 2019 so far. So today, I want to talk to everybody about electricity, and specifically how it pertains to yard and home haunters. We've all come across this issue at one point or another, but that doesn't mean you can just go plugging things in everywhere. So I want to go over a story with y'all, and I'll try and make the studio a little bit creepier. I'm in my husband's office today, and I'm getting some side-eye that this just isn't really doing it for the Halloween vibe. So I want to tell you guys a story that I'm sure everybody's gone through something similar, and then we'll be back. All right? All right. So yesterday we had our power in our garage upgraded. I was so excited, the things you get excited over as a haunter. I got 6 new 20 amp outlets added to the front of my garage, but that's the end of my story. The beginning of my story is one that I'm sure that is familiar to pretty much every home haunter out there. Maybe not so much nowadays, but definitely 10, 15 years ago when I started decorating was kind of a big topic. So it's Halloween night, I'm running around, you're plugging things in, you go to put all your Halloween night stuff, which is typically for most people is foggers, and really everything. You throw everything in the kitchen sink at them. And usually everything requires a lot of power. The only thing is, most of us don't think to try it out beforehand for many reasons. Cost, weather, time, and some of us just put everything out on Halloween itself. But we're running around, we're plugging everything in, we are moments from the first trick-or-treater, all of a sudden, you get a fog burst and everything dies. You panic. You run around, why are my lights not working? Why is the skeleton not popping up? What the... And then, you go check out your fog machine, and it's tripped your breaker. Well, I like to tell everybody to start planning your power ahead of time. The reason is because there's nothing worse than popping all of your breakers on Halloween night, moments before you have trick-or-treaters going on. It's gut-wrenching, it's crushing. Usually it leads to power cords coming from the kitchen and random outlets if you're like our house. But I figured since it's early September and everybody's starting to plan stuff, let's just have a quick chat about electricity and power and really how I approach our home haunt and how I make sure that our power is balanced. We use a lot of fog machines, we use a lot of special effects, and even though we do use a lot of low voltage and LED lighting, we use a lot of it, which requires power. And you have to make sure that power is balanced across all of your circuits, or you can cause fires, or you can really damage some expensive equipment, or stuff you've worked really hard on. So let's go back inside and let's just go over some basics. All right, and we're back. And I creeped up the place a little bit. I tried. You're welcome. So let's talk a little bit about electricity. This is really just something that I want people to start thinking about for the displays to avert the story I discussed earlier, which is the, oh my God, why are all my breakers popping and why is nothing working? Been there, and I'd like to save as many people from that as possible. So the first thing you want to do is you want to find out where you're getting your power from for your display. Most people are using outlets in their garage or in the front of their house, but wherever you're pulling it from, you're going to want to go back to your breaker box, which for us is in our garage, and figure out how many different circuit breakers or areas you're using and pulling power from, and how many amps you have available for each of those circuits. Now when I say circuits, I'm not talking about outlets. Outlets are also referred to as receptacles. You can have many on a circuit. You need to actually go to your breaker box and figure out. You may have 2 different circuits in your garage that control 2 different sets of outlets that may have 2 different amperages to them. So this is why you need to go back to your circuit breaker and check, and why it's nice to do this before you start setting everything up, and something you can do in the off season. Now once you've gotten to your breaker box and you've figured out where you're pulling your power from, you can actually figure out how many amps are dedicated to each circuit. Now amps translate basically to how much power is running to that circuit, or how much power you have available to pull from that circuit for your lights, fog machines, projectors, animated props, you name it, all the good stuff. So it's important. Once you've looked at that and you've figured out if you have a 15 or a 20 amp breaker, you can actually go in and figure out how much you can place on each circuit. This will really help you balance the power. I remember 10 to 15 years ago, you really had to do this, especially if you were an extreme haunter, because it was really important to make sure that you weren't pulling too much power. Nowadays, it's a lot easier with LED lights. The big things you need to worry about are things like fog machines, strobe lights. Anything that can pull a lot of power all at once is something that really can strain your circuit breakers, and a fog machine on a 15 amp breaker is much more likely to pop than a fog machine on a 20 amp breaker. Something to think about. Now once you've figured out if you have the 15 or 20 amp breaker, it's pretty easy to figure out how much power or wattage you have available on each circuit. You just take the 15, multiply it by the 120 volts that is pretty standard coming into everybody's home, and that gives you the amount of watts available. So on a 15 amp circuit, you will have 1800 watts. I put that in quotes, we'll discuss that in a second. And on a 20 amp breaker, you're going to have 2400 watts. Now the reality is, this total amount is not available. So I've seen many people who think that they're being slick and balancing power and going, oh, well, I can put 2,000 watt fog machines and a 400 watt fog machine on a 20 amp circuit. I'm sure somebody out there is going to try it and rub it in my face, but you shouldn't do that. The rule of thumb is that typically the wattage available, you have 80% is the max that you want to go to, or you will overload the outlet. So to kind of elaborate that and make that a little bit more clear, you don't want to use 100% of the power draw from that outlet. What that will do is, from that circuit, that will generate heat, and that can damage the outlet, the circuit breaker, something will trip, or worse, it could cause a fire. So you only want to load up to 80%. Now that's different for our display because we have things that are turning on and off and this and that. So a lot of these wattage amounts, and when I'm adding them up, are kind of generalizations just to make sure I don't have too many large items on a single circuit. So with this information, it's a little deceptive because you kind of think, oh, I have 2400 watts or I have 1800 watts available. But that's not for a sustained period. You can use up to 80% of the total wattage for a sustained period of time. So for 1800 watts, you'd basically multiply that by 0.8, and that would give you the 1440 watts that are available on a 15 amp circuit. Now with a 20 amp, I find this is the one that gets me and a lot of home haunters into trouble, because we tend to think 20 amp is like, oh yeah, we get a lot of power out of that. But the reality is, you actually only have 1920 watts of power consistently available. So with this one, I see a lot of people who will get two of those 1000 watt Spirit fog machines and plug them into the same circuit on their front porch, and yeah, they'll use one for the entire season of October, and on Halloween night they're gonna pull out that second one. Trust me, I've been there. I'm telling y'all a story because it was me. Get that second one out there, and you plug it in, you get all ready, and nothing's working. Well, that's because when you take a 1000 watt fogger and a 1000 watt fogger, that's 2000 watts. And that's already over the recommended amount. And foggers surge, especially the Spirit ones. I find with the Chauves and what they call like the prosumer or DJ models, they don't fluctuate power as much, but I do find with the Spirit ones, when they surge or when they fog, they really pull a lot of power. So if they're pulling all at once and all from the same circuit, surefire way to pop it. So the surefire way to fix that is to make sure if you do have those 1,000-watt spirit foggers that you place them on separate circuits. Now for me, I actually place pretty much every single fogger we use on a different circuit. I could get away with some of them on the same circuit. I choose not to do that and balance them out with things like LEDs and other things because I just find that I have less problems. We run an all DMX show, meaning that every single cue, fog burst, lighting, sound is timed and is cued to our music and everything else. So for us, I can't have powers and breakers going off because it completely affects other elements in our show. So this was really what I wanted to touch upon with everybody, that when you're adding up the power for your different effects and things like that and lights, just make sure that you know what kind of circuits that you're plugging into, and really, if you're an extreme haunter, as I'm finding it's more and more common, which is great, you're getting more and more stuff, and that's requiring more and more power. So it's a nice idea, especially with the fog machines, to make sure that you actually are figuring this stuff out and writing down, well, I have 3 circuits available in my garage and I'm going to plug, these 3 things into them. That way on Halloween night you get to just enjoy and know that everything's going to work. Now that you know this information, you basically can go to all of your equipment, look on the equipment and see how many watts your fog machine is pulling, your LED spotlight, this and that. I will say with the LEDs, you're pulling next to nothing. I've had little to no problems plugging lots of LED lights into few circuits. It's an area that you just don't have a problem with. Now, if those circuits are popping, that's a pretty clear sign that you're having an issue with a short in the circuit, or that something power-wise is returning feedback in a way that is unsafe. So in that instance, I would have to say that the light might be shorting out itself, and it's not really your electrical. It's the fixture or the fog machine. I've seen fog machines that are clogged, blow, circuit breakers. Definitely have been there before. When they sputter, it just pisses the machine off and ends up pulling more power from the circuit, which ends up tripping things inside. And if you're lucky, it doesn't burn out your breaker. We had that happen one year, and it sucked. And things with DC props, those really don't pull a lot of power at all. There, of course, is a formula to figure it out, and you're basically just going to take your volts times your amps, and that will give you your watts. So let's just use a Spirit, prop transformer for example. So those are going to be 6 volts. And they supply, and they supply 2 amps worth of power to the prop. So you're going to multiply those together, super easy, which is going to give you 12 watts, which is next to nothing. So with this in mind, you technically could run around 160 Spirit animatronics. So I hope this helps some of you out and maybe thinking about balancing your effects and your foggers and your lights on different circuits. Let me know in the comments below, guys, if you've had similar problems. I always love hearing a good horror story, pun totally intended, of other haunters that have gone through similar situations. It's misery just loves company. And if this is the first time to the channel, welcome. We like to post Halloween-related content, so if you're interested in that and interested in seeing what my husband and I do for the holidays, then hit that subscribe button, make sure you hit the notification bell, and also slash that like button if you're into this content in this video. It lets me know you guys appreciate it, and I miss doing this. So I've been busy. I'm glad to be back. I hope everybody's being creepy and good, and I'm gonna take this and go back to work. Bye, y'all.